Hello, I am Ron Squire. Welcome to highlights of the 2013 Formula SimRacing World Trophy. The final round of the World Trophy is the Brazilian Grand Prix, taking place around the José Carlos base in Sao Paulo, Brazil. One of the few anti-clockwise circuits on the FSL calendar, this circuit features many contrasting sections, including the long straight following the SNRS, and the infield section composed of corners including a hairpin at turn 10 and the on-cow for last corner. This requires a compromised setup from the teams to ensure maximum speed throughout the entire lap. This is of course the title decider of the FSR season between Daniel Kish and Ben Tusting, who are both locked out the front row. Ben Tusting needs to stay in classification distance in order to become the 2013 World Trophy champion. Behind him is Carlos Martin and Alari Alpes in his best position for Twister Racing. Alvaro Torres struggled a little bit here and only can qualify 5th. Norbert Liebner also struggled a bit in 6th, with on his debut Christoph Shigoa in 7th place. John Holmes can only manage 8th, with Alessio Campos in 9th and Kevin Saki rounding out the top 10. Fernando Guerrero and Drog Bocheve locks out at 11th and 12th, ahead of Jordan Weeks also on his debut. Jackson Went and Neil Tabacqua is in 14th and 15th, with Carlos Hernandez on his return to the FSR World Trophy qualifying in 17th. Milan Radivojevic here in his last race qualifies in 18th, ahead of James Sadler in 19th place. Rens Klopp manages a disappointing 20th, with Leonardo de Souza in 21st. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to participate in this Grand Prix due to my license revoked, and I was able to retire after 7 race starts. Toto Panjif was due to start the race in 25th place, but unfortunately technical problems forced him to miss out. This promoted Vincenzovic up a place. The title deciding race of the 2013 FSR World Trophy season gets underway, and despite his best efforts to overthrow his sister teammates, Ben Tusting unfortunately had to settle with 2nd place back. Going through the SNRS the first time, and everyone made it through cleanly for the first part. However, for the middle part, Jackson went clipped with Rens Klopp and therefore had to go to the back of the pack. The man who made the best start at the Brazilian Grand Prix was Christoph Shigoa on his debut. He passed both fastest speeds of Carlos Hernandez and Carlos Martin and just overthrowing Alvaro Torres, but did not spot Jonathan Holmes coming on the inside and therefore slotted behind 5th place behind the Englishman's Alberto GP. Another man on his debut was Jordan Weeks, who was eager to make mincemeat of the pack, and his fortunes came true when Carlos Martin spun at his own accord and gifted Weeks the position. With the opening lap complete, the order ran as Kish, Tusting, Olpus, Shigoa, Holmes, Leitner, Saki, Torres, Weeks and Klopp. The first man to retire from the race was Radivojevic, as he tapped the back of Panjif and unfortunately did not see Sadler coming. He went into the wall at the SNRS and unfortunately retired from the race. A couple of laps later, following the Cedar de Legado, both Guerrero and Campos went off track, and Spanner also a cloud of smoke into the other drivers, forcing them to make contact. There were minimal damage and everyone made it through, except for Guerrero, who was tapped behind from Carlos Hernandez's fastened speed and therefore retired from the race. The Brazilian Grand Prix hoping to look like to be a good debut for Christoph Shigoa. However, he had too much oversteer and then spun just after the Grande Curve. He carried on for another couple of corners until the Decido de Legado, when he unfortunately lost his brakes and therefore retired from the race. Meanwhile, further ahead, Jordan Weeks is making a huge impact on his debut as he's just chasing down the Alberto GP of Jonathan Holmes. He tried to make a move on the first corner of the SNRS, but to no avail. He tried to stay behind the Alberto GP for the next couple of corners until just going down to the Decido de Legado, he made a fantastic inside pass onto the Alberto GP to take over 5th place. The position, however, didn't last long for Jordan, as a couple of laps later, Jonathan Holmes made a good inside pass through the SNRS to overtake him back for 5th place. Jonathan Holmes tried once again to pass him down to the Cedar de Legado, but unfortunately to no avail. The season end was about to come to an abrupt halt for James Sadler, and as he was moving out of the way for Adrian Falcon, but unfortunately didn't see Jordan Weeks coming, and as a result he's been rear-ended by Jordan Weeks and therefore retired from the race while Jordan went back for repairs. We're going on to lap 10, and the order for the top 6 seemed tidy, with Daniel Kish leading ahead of his sister teammate Ben Tusting, who is calmly in 2nd place. Alari Alquist kept up honours for Twister in 3rd. Norbert Liebner is still in 4th for Crown 7 Netrex, while 5th and 6th are still headed by John Holmes and Jordan Weeks, whom he has to go for his first scheduled stop around lap 15, and despite his good pace, he had to end up behind the 2 fastened speeds of both Carlos Martin and Carlos Hernandez. The next man to retire from the race was Peutherer. However, he was oblivious to how much damage was on his car, but there was no damage at all on the spectator's point of view. But unfortunately, Peutherer instead retired on the spot, just about a couple of yards away from the scene of the accident. In every race there's always one man struggling, but no one expected it to be Alvaro Torres. Despite hardware changes, he's finding it struggling to handle this positive SimRacing car and had very difficulties getting past the GS Pro engineering of Adrian Falcon. And there was always a man with the best overtake of the day, this one particularly from Carlos Martin, as he was lining up Vincenzi Jovic just going down the Descida de Legado with a fantastic outside pass around the Torga Florio to move up just behind his teammate Carlos Hernandez. Around about lap 20, and it was Daniel Kish's first pit stop of the day, who turned out to be a one stop only for the race, as well as his sister teammate Ben Tusting, who went into the lead for only one lap before making his only stop of the race. This means that Larry Alkvist, to the delight of the Estonian fans, went into the lead but only for one lap, meaning that the full order for the top three would remain unchanged after just 3 laps. The next retirement was a bit of a surprise, this time from Rens Klopp, as he went into the pits with electrical problems, forcing him to retire after a strong 2013 season. The next man who retired from the Grand Prix was John Weeks. After a strong performance, he went into the Armco just exiting the centre S and slammed it into the barriers, losing a wheel. The next man to retire at the same spot a couple of laps later was Carlos Martin, however with much less dramatic effect, but that would still mean he retired from the race. One of the most controversial incidents in the Brazilian Grand Prix took place about a couple of laps from the end, as Larry Alkvist spun off track and crashed his car, breaking his front wing. He went to go to repair it, but unfortunately, coincidentally, he missed a pit exit first time round. And then, a couple of corners later, he coincidentally cut across the track, much more bigger than he anticipated, and what the steers anticipated, which they would look into later after the race. Second time round, he also missed a pit lane for the second time. A couple laps from the end, he led by his sister teammate John Holmes to take up the final podium spot for third place. And then just about a couple of corners from the checkered flag, he inadvertently pushed Alvaro Torres off track just before the young cow corner. Alvaro Torres was furious with Larry Alkvist's actions and unfortunately was forced to retire just about a couple of corners shy of the checkered flag. Back in Australia, Daniel Kish started off the season with a pole position. Now he's about to finish the 2013 season with a win in Brazil, and well deserved too. But the biggest praise will go to his sister teammate Ben Tusting, as the Brit comes across the line to do a Kiki Rosberg by taking the World Trophy Championship with just one win back in Abu Dhabi, putting him up with some of the greats of FSR. And finally, to top off Twister Racing's fantastic season and day, John Holmes comes home to take third place on the podium, and one of his grandest finishes yet. He takes his third podium in the World Trophy, making him absolutely good for the future to come ahead. Larry Alkvist was due to take fourth position, but unfortunately his contact with Alvaro Torres at the end put him 15 seconds down the line. This promoted Kevin Saki into fourth position and Alkvist into fifth. Adrian Falcon, despite his poor performances here and the past year, has flown into sixth. Joe Bercheve is in 7th, with Alvaro Torres, despite being retired, getting 8th place. Vargasi Campus is in 9th, with Carlos Hernandez on his return, just rounding out the top 10, with Chris Knight getting his first ever points in the Grid 1, despite finishing 6 laps from the end, in 15th place. There were 2 disqualifications for Divo Jovic and Bakwa, forced them to be disqualified from the race. So taking a look at the Drivers' Championship, and for the first time ever in FSR history, Ben Tusting has done a Kiki Rosberg and took the championship with only one win this season. Daniel Kiss had strong performances, but fortunately wasn't able to match the strong consistency of his sister teammates, who has to finish second overall. Alvaro Torres is in third despite his strong performances from Hungary onwards. Frank Schneider is in fourth, with Mark Orbis in fifth, despite having a good year but had to settle for fifth. John Holmes is in sixth, Rens Kopsen, Carlos Martin, strong performances but unfortunately has to settle for eighth. Alessio Campos in 9th, with Kevin Sagi rounding out the top 10. Looking outside the top 10, and we can see a few people who have been in the top 10 before, but unfortunately wasn't able to do so. For example, Marco Zipoli, who had a strong performance at the beginning of the season, below his strong absences meant he had to finish ultimately 15th. Alessandro Pioti also was strong, but unfortunately had to finish 17th. Runu Muru and Leonardo De Souza rounding out the top 20. Eduard Corre is in 21st, with Ilario Alquist in 22nd, Mihailo Vincenzovic in 23rd, Mika Circus 24th, Michael Francesconi 25th, and Thomas Coriala rounding out the top 30, just behind James Sadler by only 1 point. To the Constructors standings, and for the second year in a row, Go Speed Racing Team have won the Constructors Trophy by just 102 points ahead of their nearest rivals, Firecross Boston SimRacing, who had a strong performance thanks to their debut last year. Bati Bashkari UN is in third, ahead of Berto GP in fourth, ahead of their sister teammate Hackball Racing, who is coincidentally ahead of their sister teammate and the main ones to be precise, Twisted Racing in sixth. Crown 7 Netrex is in 7th, with PSR Junior Team Green ahead of PSR Junior Team Orange in 9th, with Crown 7 Netrex running out the top 10. GS Pro Engineering is in 11th, with Mr. Kumu Racing, the Estonian outfit, in 12th. Sisu Grand Prix ahead of Fast and Speed, the Argentinian veterans, in 14th, ahead of Snow Shafted Racing in 15th. Night Racing is in 16th, with Pati Bashkara Tree in 17th, Targa Florio is in 18th, GS Racing in 19th, and Night International Racing just rounding out the top 20. Just behind them is Crown 7 Netrex Junior, and just going down further are some of the other names that didn't make it through, with RTO Motorsports rounding out the top 30, and some of them are just some big names, such as Macall Racing 2, Management for You, and Nemesis Racing, who had a strong performance last year, but unfortunately had no points this year. So that concludes the 2013 FSL World Trophy during the winter. Be sure to visit the FSL website by going to www.formula-simracing.net. Check us out on both Facebook and on Twitter, and don't forget to check out our forums at racedepartment.com for details and discussion on the upcoming 2014 season, which will finally be run using ISI's brand new simulator rFactor 2. We hope you enjoyed these season's highlights. I'm Ron Squire, and join us next year for the 2014 Formula Sim Racing World Trophy.
Will you take me out of here when I'm staring turn.